Welcome, everybody. Easter Saturday. What a joy to have you here. As promised, we are live on Instagram, we're live on YouTube, and we're live with our great guest today, Joseph O'Connor, best-selling author, erstwhile friend, I was going to say of the shows, whatever show I'm on.
Yeah.
We seem to always hang out together a little bit.
Well, it's fabulous to see you, Ryan. It's you've done so much for writers and readers in Ireland over the years, and I've said to many people in the book trade, I feel a book isn't really published until I've had a chat with Ryan Tubridy about it. So it's a great pleasure to be with you today.
That is an honour for you to say, but thank you for saying that. An honour to me. This is your book, The Ghosts of Rome. We're going to talk about loads of things about your life and everything in between, but I think for the purpose of this, because it's a book club as such, we've asked our listeners and viewers and readers to have a look at your book. And why don't you give us the elevator pitch and then we'll get stuck in. And everyone's welcome to send in comments if you want to ask Joe anything or ask him to explain things. Please do. Off we go.
Right. Well, the book before this was called My Father's House, and it's set in Rome at Christmas time 1943 during the Nazi occupation of Rome. There's a wonderful man called Hugh O'Flaherty, who is from, important to say, born in County Cork, but identified as a Kerry person. And I'm very proud of him in Kerry. He was a priest in the Vatican during World War II, and he put together a group to help people who were fleeing from the Nazis. So in that book, there are some real people who I have fictional versions of, and there are some entirely fictional characters. One of them is the Contessa Giovanna Landini, who is a Roman noblewoman who is an anti-fascist and what we would now call a human rights activist, though she wouldn't have used those words. She's a great friend and comrade of Hugh in the escape line. I realised a third of the way into My Father's House that this woman is actually such a powerful voice that I need to write a novel in which she will be the central character. So The Ghosts of Rome is designed to be a standalone novel or to be read after My Father's House.
Yes.
That takes place over Easter 1944.
How appropriate.
Appropriate to be chatting about it today.
On Easter Saturday, yeah.
And she is a woman who is strong and frail and courageous and funny, tough, has been through it, has had her losses, has her issues. So she is by no means a saint, but as Johnny May, one of my characters, says, you learn more about reading the lives of the sinners than the lives of the saints. So the book is about her and her relationship, I suppose is the word for it, with Paul Hauptmann, who is the Gestapo commander of Rome. And they have a sort of strange obsession with each other, and it coheres around one particular escaped prisoner, a Polish airman who the escape line decide to rescue. So that's the kind of the page-turning element of the book is what happens around him.
Yes.
But it's really a look at Giovanna and her life and the values that she embodies and her kind of cat and mouse struggle with Hauptmann. The Monsignor O'Flaherty appears in The Ghosts of Rome as a less central character. Yes. Giovanna's the heroine of the book.
Yeah, she's a ghostly figure almost in some way. She's like translucent or something about her. She's ethereal, or I find her remarkable.
Yeah, well, the book is called The Ghosts of Rome, and I tried to make Rome itself kind of a haunting presence in the book.
Yeah, it's unsettled, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And people who've been to Rome will know it does have this strange mix of extraordinary, ethereal beauty, to use your word, and then this history of violence. You know, you go to the Colosseum and you realise what the Colosseum was for. You walk the little back streets of Rome, the little vicolo, as they call them in Italian, the tiny little alleyways, too narrow to ride a bike down, practically. And you realise that this is where the Nazis were, this is the place from where people were deported. When you look down at the cobbled streets of Rome, there's a German artist with a project at the moment to replace a cobble with a brass plaque in the ground for every single Jewish person who was deported from Rome. So you're looking up at the beautiful stuff, the Michelangelo, you're hearing the gorgeous music. Yes. And then you look down at the ground and you see these cobblestones and you realise it's a place that has encompassed the best and the worst of us. Yes. So it is very haunting. It's a city where there are a lot of ghost stories. Yeah. Giovanna's house in the book may or may not be haunted. And as you say, she's a rather ghostly presence herself.
Yes. When you mentioned Hauptmann, the character, the villain in the piece, you know, I heard the music, you know, in my head of that bomb, like the Phantom Menace. He's such a dark egg and complicated and
he is, I mean,
damaged sort of creature.
He is. I tried to write him as a real person, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we all know there's a kind of stock issue Nazi
Yeah,
that you take off the shelf.
Hello, hello,
he's been in every movie and every
The Great Escape.
novel. He's blonde and he's good looking and has a scar probably from the dueling accident that went wrong. But I tried to write Hauptmann as a real person, A, because I thought it would be more frightening.
Yeah.
And B, like, it's unsettling to us. The reason we say the Nazis were monsters is that it's unsettling to us that they were people who had wives and children.
Well, you've just sparked in me the Hannah Arendt quote about the banality of evil when she was covering the trial of Eichmann, and she said this guy's just an accountant.
Yeah.
Who's kind of trumped up on his own, high in his own supply with his uniform.
Yeah.
And I think, is that what you're talking about? That these were
Hauptmann before the war was a mechanical draftsman. He worked for the electricity supply board in Berlin. He's not even a very convinced Nazi.
Yeah.
I think there was a crossroads in young Paul Hauptmann's life when he could have gone one way or the other.
Yes.
And I think mainly for reasons of self-advancement, he threw in his lot with this crowd. And then once he started, he got drawn deeper into it. And in the end, to quote the great Bob Dylan, he had no direction home. Yeah. So he's stuck in this ideology that he doesn't really believe, and he becomes monstrous as a result of it. But he is also a real man. He has a wife, he has children who he cares about, he listens to music, he does the things that everybody does, and then he goes into work and he tortures people. So it's more unsettling to have him portrayed in that way rather than the kind of allo like figure.
Yeah, exactly. So
who's easily dismissed,
Yeah, precisely, as a caricature as opposed to this a real human being. Delia.
Yes.
I first came across her weirdly in my research for my book on John F. Kennedy.
You would have, yes.
Because her husband was the ambassador, Thomas Kiernan.
Yes, he was.
Who handed the bowl of shamrock to President Kennedy in the 1960s. But here she is as the ambassador's wife. She's a very mischievous character, isn't she?
It's just such fun to have a character like Delia Kiernan.
She was a big star.
She was a huge star in 1940s and 1950s Ireland. The great man John Kelly said to me recently that...
The presenter?
Yes.
Yeah.
In 1950s Ireland, Delia was kind of the biggest thing we had to a pop star in that she didn't do, folk sessions over pubs. She did concert tours and she recorded albums, and she famously was playing in the Opera House in Belfast on the night that the Luftwaffe bombed the theatre. And as I have her say in The Ghosts of Rome, that's what you call a mixed review. But she was a big star, and she's very mischievous. She's very sardonic.
Yeah, she is.
She is a Catholic, a struggling Catholic.
Struggling.
She doesn't like the pomp and the power of the bishops and cardinals over in Rome. She likes kind of pulling the rug from under them a bit. She's married to Thomas Kiernan, who is the ambassador of Ireland in Rome. Ireland is a neutral country.
Yes.
Delia should not be involved in the escape line at all, and she must have driven him stark, staring, mad.
Yeah.
She became in real life a very strong comrade of Hugh O'Flaherty and helped many people to survive and saved many lives.
It's remarkable.
But she's kind of witty and tongue in cheek and not one to be messed with.
No.
So she's a fabulous character to write about. I did sometimes have the experience going down in the mornings to write a chapter that I knew would be about Delia or in her voice.
Yeah.
And it was nearly like having an arm wrestle with Delia.
Wow.
She'd be saying, you make me say this, and I would never say that, you idiot. And, you're making me sound like I'm from Dunleary, like you are. I'm from the west of Ireland. Stop making me sound like Ross O'Carroll Kelly.
Oh, great.
So all my characters in these books became very, very real, and I think about them still. Like, speaking of haunting, I'm a bit haunted by them. If I see something on the news now, I kind of would ask myself, what would Delia think of this? Or what would Joe Landini think? Or what would the Monsignor think, especially? His whole thing was God has no country. He's I've been privileged enough to read all of the Monsignor's surviving letters to kind of through the generosity and graciousness of his family.
Yes.
And he just comes across as such a likeable, unjudgy man with a great curiosity for the world. He's not down on people who don't think the way he does, or are from other countries or have other faiths. He's always trying to bring people together. And again, he says in the letters, that God doesn't have a passport. God doesn't need a flag. God doesn't do countries. And it's got a voice that I think we might need these times of division. So a very likeable man, loved his music, loved golf, loved boxing, always writing back home to small town Kerry to see like the gossip, loved a bit of the goss.
Yeah.
I have a great sort of mental picture of him in his room in the Vatican on the wireless, tuning into boxing matches from Madison Square Garden in the middle of the night. I'm just a lovely man to go and have a pint with. I'd say he didn't drink himself, but was
convivial in the extreme.
Convivial, likeable, wise, tolerant, generous, warm man. Yeah.
Did you find because as it happens, you were both reading the same book at the moment, not your own. We've read that. Called The Einstein Vendetta by Thomas Harding, in which the Nazis go chasing Albert Einstein's cousin because they can't get to Albert himself, and he's in Florence in Italy. And I found, and I often do, with looking at France and Italy, have very peculiar relationship with World War II.
Yeah.
And what they did and what they didn't do. Now, they both ended up on the right side of history in many respects, but there's a lot of sordid history with regards to extermination, deportation. Not just the Jewish people, obviously, but just people who were not in flavour. Did you feel? Did you come across a lot of that?
I felt it very powerfully in one way that I'll tell you about, where myself and Anne Marie, my beloved, we've been going to Rome a lot in recent years while I've been researching these books. And we usually stay in the same neighbourhood, Trastevere, old neighbourhood of Rome, and we often stay in the same apartment, which is on the 4th or 5th floor of a building in Via Goffredo Mameli in Trastevere, an old building from the 1910s, built around a courtyard.
Lovely.
I woke up one morning there, maybe 2 years ago, and I thought I heard the sound of Hebrew language prayer. I thought, well, it must be coming from one of the other apartments, or maybe it's the Sabbath or something. But anyway, we went out to get a coffee, and down in the lobby were a group of Jewish people who had gathered to commemorate a man who had been taken from that very building.
Good Lord.
So, I was very aware of this, that this man lived in this space. He went out this same front door as we're going out of every day, and one day he just disappeared. And, I came to understand a bit more about it, I suppose, from research I was doing in a photograph archive there. And there was a story of a woman who was an anti-Nazi. She'd gone around Italy taking photographs of the peasantry, the contadini, as they call them, in little villages in Italy. Rather idealised.
Yeah, they feature in the Einstein Vendetta as well,
John Hind, that kind
touch
of
the donkeys and the turf,
One of them ends up, without her consent, on the cover of a Nazi publication in Italy, the glorious Italian peasantry, who will do so well under fascism. She complains about it, and the Nazis say, well, we can remove it if you like. Would you like your son to be killed? Would you like your husband to be deported? Now, we'll take your picture off the cover. There will be a price. Wow. She's faced with the choice. She says, leave the photograph. They come back and say, well, now we're going to do a whole issue of the magazine with all of your photographs. Wow. And you're going to give us a statement supporting fascism, or else this is going to happen. Wow. So you see, we all think that we would make the correct choice, and we've all asked ourselves that question: what would we do when the Nazis came down the street? I did get a very powerful sense of how the Nazis weaponized things like family, culture, food. Big theme all the way through the Ghosts of Rome. The Nazis are rationing food. If there's any displeasure from the populace, the water gets switched off. There won't be any food ration cards this week. So it's up to yourselves.
So that's you're talking about sadism as well. I mean, there was
sadism as the use of terror as a weapon. Up to a very sophisticated level.
Sophisticated. I mean, as we know from the Nuremberg trials and everything else in between, the itemization of genocide, the itemization, the annotation of cruelty was extraordinary.
Yes, and the Ghosts of Rome deals with an incident still very controversial in Rome, the massacre at the Ardeatine Caves, which was the Italian Roman partisans attacked a German column and killed 35 of the soldiers on Via Rasala. People who know Rome, you can still see the bullet marks on the walls of the street. The Nazi response was to kill 350 Romans. It's 10 for every German in one night. And it's still a very contested, very discussed issue in Italy, because some people feel the partisans shouldn't have done that. They must have known what they would bring on themselves. There's a museum of the occupation in Rome, and even the existence of that museum people are uneasy about. I did a lot of research for the Ghosts of Rome in the Imperial War Museum in London.
Stunning museum.
Amazing place where they have many recorded testimonies of people who went through World War II, including a number of the people who planted the bomb in Via Rasala that day, going through the reasons why they did, their doubts, and a remarkable interview with one young woman who was a partisan, very courageous. She didn't. She just said at the last minute,
I'm not doing this.
Not to. So we think it's very black and white. If we were there at the time, it's many, many shades of grey.
Layered. We have our own civil war in Ireland that have scars still. I think, there was a great book not too long ago called The Missing Postman by Faulkner O'Driscoll, which I'd recommend to people, because when he went down to research that story about an incident that happened in a village in the early 20th century, people said, we don't want to talk about that.
Well, now, I've sometimes wondered if this is one of the reasons why there is only one interview that I know of with Monsignor Hugh O'Flaherty, and late in his life he retired back to Cahersiveen. He went to live with his sister over a grocer's shop in Cahersiveen.
Kerry,
such a lovely image, having been through the heroic stuff that he did. He didn't talk about his wartime work at all. He didn't talk about the fact that he saved 7,000 people. And one day, and my sense is that he did this just to get it off the agenda, get it done.
He did the
interview. He sat down with a journalist who was a friend, said, this is what I'm going to say. It became a book, and that was it. And I used to think it was because of his modesty, and I still largely do think that.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder, Ryan, if still in the 1960s there would have been an unease in rural Ireland, a place where there's still, for very good reason, folk memories of the black and tans, if there still would have been unease about the fact that many of the people whom Hugh helped were British servicemen.
Yeah.
He was God Has No Country, but not everyone in Ireland would have been like that.
So much to talk to feast on in your answers. If you're just joining us, welcome. By the way, we are live on Instagram and on YouTube with our guest Joseph O'Connor. Although I have to say, the last 20 minutes, it felt like we were in the pub just shooting the breeze. I love that. That's why I always love seeing you. Anyway, I did ask you for your comments, and they're coming in huge. Hi, Joseph. Happy Easter to you. How long did it take to write this book? Question from Sweet Bay Leaf.
So I planned it for about a year, which is my usual thing. I do as much planning as I do writing. It has a thriller shape, so that has a particular demand when you're doing the architecture of a book. That you want to be very page turning. It's the same with Star of the Sea. I did as much planning and architecture, and then I wrote it fairly quickly. I wrote it in about 9 months because I have a weird theory that
it's a baby.
Well, it caused me a lot of sleepless nights, I can tell you.
9 months every 9 months.
And a bit of teething. I think that a book acquires the speed that it was written at. I think if you take a very long time to read a book or to write a book, it's going to be a slow read.
Interesting. There's a pace then.
I think so, yeah. So about a year, yeah.
About a year. Joanne says, I absolutely adored My Father's House and almost finished Ghosts of Rome. Outstanding, both of them. I'm a fan of World War II historical fiction. What is it about this period that inspired you? That's a great question. Why? Because we talk about Star of the Sea, which you'll talk about in a minute. Shadow Play. Thank you. I think it's one of my all-time favourite books. I was telling people about it last week. It's so beautiful, but we'll come back to that. This period, was there something, or was it a period of a sequence of events?
I start with a person, usually.
Oh, very good.
I start with a character, and the character of Hugh O'Flaherty has been in my head since I was in my early 20s. Around the first literary festival I ever went to, I hadn't published anything, was Listowel Writers Week.
The great Listowel Writers Week,
the oldest literary festival in Ireland. John B. Keane invited me to go, and of course I went.
You were a journalist at that time.
I was a journalist.
Sunday
Tribune.
Tribune,
a competition in the Irish Post newspaper over in the UK for
still going strong.
Still going strong, and it was a short story competition. The prize was a trip to Listowel Writers Week. I didn't win. I came in one night to my dismal little bedsit in Lewisham in South East London, and there was a 1980s answering machine, and there was a 1 digit flashing, which didn't happen very often. Right, I pressed And the voice would have been recognisable to anyone in Ireland because it was the voice of the great John B. Keane.
Author of The Field and Sive and everything else, yeah.
Look, you know, you didn't win, but you come over anyway.
Oh,
and,
good man.
Kerry is full of O'Connors, and I'm married to an O'Connor, and you probably are the heir to Carrigafoyle Castle, the Kerry seat of the O'Connors, which I'm not. Come over. So I went over and he was great. He's a fabulous man. And at some point during the weekend, somebody told me about this wonderful Kerry man.
What a bit of serendipity there in some ways.
So I have a list of people in my head that I'd like to write a novel about. I mean, I'd love to write a novel about Charles Stewart Parnell.
Yeah, I'd love to read that. Yeah. I'd love to read that.
Because it has everything.
It does, yeah.
I'd love to write a novel about Joe Strummer of The Clash. You know, I have a number of people who kind of hover around my head like the planes around the air traffic control and in Dublin Airport, and occasionally I reach out and I grab one.
What a beautiful image! I say you're up. Yeah. Charles Stewart Parnell, Ian, Irish pickers, they go around finding, historical features and things. And I had him on the show, and he said, "I want to give you a gift," and I said, "Not at all." And he said, "It's just a small thing." And I opened it up when I got home, and I like letters. And, I love letters from history if I can. I've got a few of them. But this one was a letter and two little bits of material in it. One with a stripe, like a pinstripe, and the other like a cord of some sort. And in it was, "Dear Mr. Murphy, could you please fix up a suit in the following using the following two patterns and materials and so on, and for collection in coming months. Thanks as always, C.S. Parnell."
Yeah, wow.
And I have that hanging at home. And if you do go to Parnell, you have to come and see that. Come to the house and have a coffee, and I'll show you that letter, because
I'd love to see it.
It really humanises him.
No, it does. And I mean, the story has everything, including the fact that the entire subsequent history of Ireland would have been different if Parnell's story had turned out a different way. Our entire literature would have been different. I mean, Joyce is obsessed with Parnell and the fall of Parnell, and it really shapes his work.
Yeah, and what a stupid fall though. Like, you know what I mean? It was
love letters. One of the great pleasures of the research in the Imperial War Museum was almost like a subgenre of book, Ryan, where a fella who escaped from a prisoner of war camp in Italy went back to the States, and he wrote his memoirs over a week, just so that they wouldn't disappear, and they were printed in maybe 20 or 30 copies for family and friends. One really remarkable one of a young soldier who escaped, went back to the States. A friend in the little town had acquired a reel-to-reel tape recorder, and this young soldier sat up for 2 nights in front of the tape recorder. The only other people in the room were his parents. He told this story, and it was copied, given to his friends. Those small issue books and the soldier's letters just reveal so much more. There's a beautiful letter from a soldier who's present at the liberation of Rome. Wow. One of the first marches into St. Peter's Square, he and his comrades are given an audience with the Pope. The Pope comes down, gives them all rosary beads, blesses them. This American soldier says, this is great now. I got 2 rosary beads. When I go back to New York, I'm going to try and get off with every Irish Catholic girl in Brooklyn, and I'm going to use that, So the rosary beads were being put to different purposes. Stuff about food, stuff about music, the look of the people, the handsomeness of the Roman people, the fact that they walking around is kind of an art. In Rome. Stuff that you're just not going to get in the history textbooks. They're all there in letters.
Well, letters are just a gift, and sadly kind of dying art, but they're not fully. How can I ask you briefly about Sinead? Can I bring her into the room for a moment, or do we not talk about that?
I don't really, but
I won't then.
Well, you're a friend of hers, so.
Just very briefly, I just wanted to pass on the condolences. So Sinead O'Connor was very kind to me when I was in trouble, and I just wanted to pass on my condolences. I think everyone listening and watching would say the same, because just that we mentioned letters off air, and there were letters sent to you from people. I just know what that means, and people can be very kind. And I hope you're all doing okay. We miss her.
We're doing well, Ryan, and I appreciate what you said. I know that you and Sinead were good friends, and that she thought very highly of you, and thank you for saying that.
No, that's okay. Because I was also a neighbour of John, your brother.
Yes.
And I met him.
You've been in my life. I think you lived on the same road.
It was the same road. I can't shake your family. And I met John and your dad the other day in Café de Janelle. And your dad's in fine fettle, and he's I hope he's doing okay too.
He's doing very well. He's going to his regular singing lessons.
Good man.
he wouldn't mind me saying, the age of 87. And during that moment in an Irish family night where somebody says, stand up and sing a song, my father stands up and sings Que Gelida Manina from Puccini's La Bohème.
Does he
and
really?
that shuts everybody up,
I
right?
bet you it does. What's your party piece? If you're dragged up.
Myself and Anne-Marie have been known to sing I Can't Help Falling in Love with You.
As in Wise Men Say.
Yeah,
Great song.
It's a great song.
The Elvis version?
Of course. What else? The Elvis in Vegas
Only
version.
fools rush in. That's very sweet.
Yeah.
It's a good song as well.
She's very sweet. I'm very lucky to have her. Yeah.
How did you meet?
We met through work. My first book came out 30 years ago. It was called Cowboys and Indians.
Yeah.
Anne-Marie was a television producer in London. She came over to Dublin to have a couple of meetings, and I met her at 6:30 one Friday night in the bar of the Shelburne Hotel, and I left at 5 to 7 and in love. And I met my dad later that night, and I said, geez, I think I'm in love. I think I've met the person who I'm going to marry. And our meeting would have lasted longer than 25 minutes, except that Anne-Marie was going on a date with another fella. And so I asked her shortly afterwards, do you think you'd like to go on a date with me? And she said, no, I don't think that would ever work out. So it's 27 years later. She's still not sure if it's going to work out.
Well, hey, listen, good luck with that, Joe.
Yeah,
hopefully things work out in the end.
Yeah.
Keep trying.
She's doing very well herself. Her her stage adaptation of The Great Little Women is on a 24-city tour of the UK.
Congratulations.
This year. So a little crossover there. Jo Landini in The Ghosts of Rome. Her friends nickname her Jo because of her love for Jo March and Little Women. So that's my little way of saying hello and I love you to Anne-Marie.
Oh, crikey, I feel like I'm in the way here. That's very romantic, Joe. Yeah. Jeepers. Okay, Ryan and Joseph, my 17-year-old daughter has just written her first book, says Golden 5507, the names I got. Any advice on how to go about publishing it? Any groups to get involved in? I'm sure you're asked this quite a lot, so do you have a top tip for people with the manuscript in their hand?
So the first thing to do is get into a group.
A writer's group.
A writer's group. If there isn't one in your area or in your school or in your college, found one. You just need 2 or 3 people. Be great mutual support, first readers. When you've done that, you can... Self-publishing is a big thing now. Many, many people, even on Amazon, are publishing their own books. The next step after that would be to try and find a literary agent. So what this girl, boy...
It's a girl, 17-year-old daughter,
So what she needs to do is get her mum or her dad to buy her a copy of the Writers and Artists Yearbook, a wonderful resource for all young writers. It's updated every year. It's a great Christmas present or birthday present for a young writer. It has so much information about publishers, agents, editors, all of that. The Irish Writers and Artists Yearbook.
Great. Ryan, what's your party piece? It is...
It's going to be Eleanor Rigby.
I wish it was. It is. No, I have it. It's. I've got you under my skin, Frank Sinatra.
Love it.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
If it's karaoke, it's That's Life because I have the words to read, but it's always a bit of Frank. I get my swag on. You see, when I have a few scoops.
I love Frank.
Do you?
Yes, I do. I was listening to Marty Whelan.
Oh, I love Marty's show. Yeah.
Well, Marty is a Frank obsessive. Marty's a serious. Like he's got all the albums.
Yeah.
He said, there's one particular Frank album that if somebody tells me they don't like Frank, I get them this album.
Oh, yeah.
Live at the Cedars, it might be called. It's a live album. It's recorded in Las Vegas.
Not the Sands, is it? No.
Live at the Sands.
Yeah, okay.
And on the strength, purely of Marty talking about it, I went and bought it. It would blow your mind.
Yeah.
It is absolutely
Is he doing the banter in between the songs?
The house band is Count Basie.
Count Basie, yeah. Orchestra. I mean, that's your house band. You can't go wrong.
It is a magnificent album.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Okay, I love it. The wee small hours in the morning. Listen to that song by Frank Sinatra. Looking forward to seeing at the Dalkey Book Festival. You're at the Dalkey Book Festival, Joe? Good man.
On the 12th of June.
12th of June. Love the Missing Postman. Waterford Greenway could do a bike and murder mystery tour. That's great. Judith Murphy, appreciate that. Our friend Liz Nugent is
Liz.
She's brilliant. Great, another great woman for supporting writers and Irish writing.
I can't speak highly enough about Liz. She spoke at our UL Creative Writing
Festival
last
saw her
weekend.
posting that.
My day job, I run the creative writing program at the University of Limerick. We had our lovely festival last weekend, which Liz did the final event at. She was absolutely magnificent. As always, she's been a huge supporter to us.
Well, she has a question, and she says, I can't wait for the third in the trilogy. Can you give us a clue as to which characters you're thinking of focusing in on? Oh, that's a great question. Thanks, Liz.
In My Father's House and The Ghosts of Rome, there are a lot of very high-minded, noble people, and there's a fella called Johnny May, who was a nightclub performer back in Soho.
Great.
And he's a Cockney, he's a non-religious Jew, and he's a bit of a naughty boy. And when the escape line needs somebody to go and steal a German army motorbike, you ask Johnny May.
Is he a spiv?
He's a bit of a spiv.
A bit of a spiv. If you want stockings, you want cigarettes, what do you need? You know.
When I lived in London first, I spent 8 years living in South East London, and there would be old men in the Amersham Arms pub in New Cross sitting there during the day, going on about the Germans. And there's a bit of that in Johnny May. Also, I love Soho in the 40s, Bohemia, jazz. So he's a saxophonist.
Yeah,
he loves
Ronnie Scott's.
He loves Coleman Hawkins.
Great.
And he slightly takes the out of his high-minded mates. I mean, he's very high-minded himself. But but he's got a bit of salt and pepper too.
Yeah.
He's a sardonic, witty character who laughs at himself. So he's the central character of the third book, which at the moment is called Lost Waters.
Oh, very good.
And that will be out the year after.
Congratulations in advance. I'm excited about that. It's funny, Soho, I never knew London until I moved there about 18 months ago in any meaningful way. And now I'm very well acquainted with it. So I'm in St. John's on Abbey Road. As a fellow Beatles fan, you'll appreciate that. But it's all very tame and it's lovely and pretty. But on the nighttime, if I'm going in for a bit of mischief, I go into Soho, and it still has that lovely.
People have been going into Soho for a bit of mischief for hundreds
of years. It still has that lovely sort of slightly louche feel
bit
to
of
it.
grit under the fingernails. Dodgy restaurants, beautiful jazz, music, the narrow little streets.
Yeah.
I mean, so wonderfully serenaded by the great Shane MacGowan, Rainy Nights in Soho.
Rainy Night in Soho.
Anyone who has spent a rainy night in Soho absolutely knows.
You know, you can see the red lights on the puddles.
The red lights in the puddles, the Italian delicatessens, people speaking different languages, the smell of the different food. I mean, I love London and love that part of it in particular. I'm glad you're living in Abbey Road. There is my copy of The Ghosts of Rome, which I've signed.
I'm so honoured.
There's a little quote there from one of the great Anglo-Irish writers of his era.
Dear Sir, Madam, will you read my book? It took me years to write. Won't you take a look? By Mr. John Lennon, paperback writer. I love that. I'm so chuffed.
You know, it's a great place to be living. My son James.
Oh, that's great.
Who is living in London himself. He's making music. Had a session recently in Abbey Road. And just listening to him talking about it gave me shivers.
It's hallowed territory. I went in a few times. We did a radio show from there 100 years ago. But more recently, my friend Killian Donnelly, who's a singer, on the West End, was recording something in there, and I went in with him and his dad, and you know, he was buzzing from being there singing. His dad was buzzing from his son being in this amazing place, and I was buzzing because, you know, for obvious reasons, it's Beatleland, and you getting the same thing secondhand. There's something about that. I went to see McCartney in the O2 in London just before Christmas, 2.5 hours, 80 plus years old, 82. I passed by his house. He has taken an injunction out of me because I'm kind of loitering. No, but I know where he lives. It's disturbing.
Yeah. Well, look, sure, London's one of the great world cities. If you're into painting, it's great. If you're into classical music, it's great. If you're into opera, it's great. If you're into pop music, everybody. It's where Jimi Hendrix was kind of discovered. He was a star in London long before he was a star in the States. It's where the Beatles recorded. Walk down the King's Road in Chelsea, there are murals on the wall of the Kinks performing there. It's where punk was born on the King's Road in Chelsea. For the music fan, it's just a wonderful, wonderful city.
As I always say, only a fool would be bored in London. Roisin, watching you here in New York City. How about that? And thoroughly enjoying a conversation with Joe. Thanks, Roisin. And Liz back on to say she loves Johnny and was hoping it would be him. So continued success to you both. Thanks, Liz. And Margaret says, what is a good book for you to start up a book club? I could listen to Joseph all day. We'll come back to that if that's okay. I love the lyricism in the way Joe speaks. Now, let me alight on that because that's a great message. Shadowplay. I just want to. Why Shadowplay really got got me. I mean, all your books.
I'm fond of it myself.
It's just, and I sent you a little photo from Stratford upon Avon recently because of the
Sir Henry Irving's
memorial, exactly, and Bram Stoker. And we were talking before we came on air today about Hatchard's, one of that beautiful bookshop in Piccadilly, and you were saying Bram Stoker used to shop there.
Yep.
And I think Bram Stoker still. I think he's one of the characters on your bus in your head.
Yeah, I love.
He has a seat
Stoker.
there, doesn't he?
Yeah. And again, for a very, very, very long time, way back into my childhood, I had a Liberties ancestor who was a chimney sweep, and
because your dad's from the Liberties in Dublin,
from France Street in the Liberties. His uncle or someone on that side was a chimney sweep, and the story was told in the family, and my grandmother told it to me, that one night he'd been coming home from his rounds. He stops outside St. Michael's or St. Michael's Church,
where the mummies are.
Where the mummies are, and there's a well-dressed, rather portly man standing outside, looking a bit lost. And my aunt, we'll call him my great uncle, the chimney sweep, goes over and says, "Are you lost?" He's a decent Liberties man. This man explains that he's not lost. He's interested in the mummies in the church. He's waiting for the church to open. His name is Stoker, Abraham Stoker. I write ghost stories and I'm interested in what's to be seen in the church. So this story was handed on, slightly exaggerated by my wonderful grandmother. It sort of became that my granduncle and Bram Stoker met, every Tuesday night. By the time I was 16, it was like Bram Stoker was invited round to the house for tea a few times. But I was obsessed from the time I was 7 or 8 with the notion that this great, great man who wrote a book that changed the world in Dracula, that one of my family had met him.
So you're related to Bram Stoker, is what you're saying.
Yes, Bram Stoker's my dad.
Bram Stoker.
But I mean, I love him. I love his work. I love that the most important relationship of his life, this 30-year friendship with Henry Irving, we still don't fully understand. I love Bram's London. The fact that he was a great man of the theatre. He worked with Henry Irving in the Lyceum Theatre for 30 years. He was the manager. He hired the actors. He did everything. He went to the performance every night. And the beautiful image in his own writings of when the show was over at 2:00 in the morning, Bram would walk down empty Oxford Street by himself, or he would drift off into the East End, the mist-covered docks where the ships were coming in from India in the middle of the night. The territory that would be immortalised in Dracula, which is a great novel of London. People think of it as Transylvania, but where Dracula really comes to life is where the Count comes to live in London. And it was Bram's great genius. There had been many vampire books before. He was the first person to take the vampire and put them into the contemporary world. Count Dracula's living in a townhouse on Piccadilly. Count Dracula could be beside you on the tram in London. And he was a dear, modest, likeable man, a bit like Hugh O'Flaherty.
You see, there you go.
I loved spending that time with him. And I'm fond of that book myself.
Oh, it's a beauty. If people haven't read it. Thank you for all the comments coming in, by the way. We are still live on Instagram and for the next few minutes with Joseph O'Connor, our guest today in our Bookshelf Book Club. A friend of mine is a movie director from America, and he sent me an email last week. He said, I'm out the door with work, but he said, I know you're a bookworm. Any good books that might make movies? So I sent him 4 books. 2 of them were yours, and now I'm sure they're all in production anyway somewhere. But I said to him, I just said, look, if you haven't read Star of the Sea, it covers everything. Obviously Ireland and America, that might be, and then the sea, which is also a character. I mentioned Shadowplay because I just thought that's a movie waiting to happen.
I have a script of Shadowplay that I have written. And if anybody is,
you have the script written. Okay, I'm gonna tell him that next later on. I also mentioned He by John Connolly and the new one by Kevin Barry, set in the Wild West, which is great. Which is great fun. I never remember the name, but anyway, that is for another day. But Star of the Sea, continues to be one of the greatest books of all time.
Well, it's 20-something years old now, Ryan. I would say rarely a week goes by without me getting a letter from someone about Star of the Sea. This is the kind of thing that should happen to every author once. I mean, I wrote that book as a labour of love. I didn't think it would sell. I just wanted to write that book about those events and those people. It became huge. It was published in 40 languages, sold 1 million copies. It's still selling. It's still beloved. And it taught me a lot about how to write. You know, I had to become a better writer than I was in order to write that book. And it was such a blessing in my life. It was published in Chinese recently. It was published in languages where you can't even understand the alphabet. Never mind the words. And so it was a huge privilege and a huge blessing for that book to be part of my life.
Well, it's nice to be able to say thank you for it because I just love it. Sheila Flannery says, I'm a third of the way through the book, really enjoying it. Thank you, Joe. Another Star of the Sea is the best book I ever read. Mary Hargadon says, say hi to Joe from me. And Teresa Piggott says, there's great background to the characters in The Ghosts of Rome. Thank you for that. Margaret Buckley says, love Joe's voice, the two of you together. What a treat. And Shane says, I always get a kick out of crossing the zebra crossing at Abbey Road Studios. You might as well.
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't? And, you know, I now, because I live right beside it, I now have to cross it to get to the other side. And that's quite a trip in its own way, you know,
absolutely,
which is great. Okay, Joe, we're going to wrap up now because we hit the 40-minute mark, and that's generally where we say thank you. But congratulations on that. Thank you for bringing in this book for me, which is now signed, which I will treasure. I'll put them beside another couple of books you have. But you also brought in this beautiful limited edition version, which is different to the one you see in the shop.
It's from Kenny's wonderful booksellers in Galway.
Brilliant. So that's a nice touch too. So I'm delighted for you and the ongoing success. I'm glad that we got together again.
It's great that we did.
Get the band back together.
It's been too long. Yeah, we didn't have much to talk about, but
no, I know
we kept the 40 minutes going somehow.
I knew we'd struggle, but when we got there eventually.
Listen, it's such a pleasure, Ryan, as I said, and I mean, and I've said to many people, and I've said to you, you've done so much for all of us in the book community in Ireland. You've been a great supporter for readers and writers. It's tremendous that you're doing this now, and it's always a pleasure to meet you and chat with you about books.
Likewise.
What a gent you are, my friend.
That really means a lot to me. Thanks, Joe. You're gonna hot seat. Yeah. We're gonna bring Aidan in because I'll shoot the breeze about other things. Maybe there's coffee upstairs. we'll get you coffee upstairs. Aidan, you're gonna get cappuccino. Good to see you, Joe. Thanks so much. We're still live on Instagram, by the way. So stick with us because we're gonna have a bit of a chat now with Aidan. Welcome, Aidan Power. So Aidan Power is the man. What do they call the man with the buttons and the? It's good to see you.
The man. With
Will you press
buttons.
all the buttons and stuff? I never know what's going on. Really,
I'll take that.
You know what I mean.
Tom's doing the button.
Sorry,
pushing
Tom.
Today.
You okay over there, Tom? Yeah. Are you still chewing gum?
Not to underplay it.
It's
blowing bubbles.
But it must be gone out of flavour now. That's 40 minutes. It must be disgusting at this stage. I'm like a teacher. Sorry, Tom. No, I wasn't saying, are you chewing gum? Get it out of your mouth. Okay.
Teacher Tubbs.
What a lovely
Wonderful.
Conversation.
Wonderful.
That man.
May I take that with me and read it, please?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You'll have to. Yeah.
Well, no, not the signed one.
The signed one with the lovely Beatles quote there from Paperback Writer. No. Maybe later on.
Do you want to sing That's Life?
Yeah.
Do you want to sing Under My Skin?
That's Under My Skin. That's one for
Live at the Sands, one of the
great albums,
most wonderful live albums. And then if you're into the Rat Pack, by extension of that, there's the Rat Pack Live at the Sands where they're doing all.
So you got Sammy Davis Jr., Dean Martin, and Joey Bishop,
and the playing and the acting.
It's great. It's great.
And Dean Martin pretending he's a drunk, but he was never drunk.
Never. No. Apple juice. Thanks to everybody for the comments. Loads of lovely comments and questions.
Yeah, and lots more coming in. Dave says he will see you in Dalkey, Joe. Joe's still outside. He is here. Thank you both. A lovely way to spend a rainy Saturday afternoon. I mean, the weather put years on you.
Yeah, it's poor.
What else have we got? Okay, lots of other wonderful book club interview. Thank you and happy Easter. Hi to you, Sheila. Fantastic interview. Thank you, Ryan. Oh, and I want to give a special shout out to somebody who is suffering with hay fever.
Oh no!
I feel your pain. I've got it too.
Do you have the hay fever, Tom? Are you hay fever material as well? Oh, God help you.
Hay fever material.
I managed to avoid that one in the genes, so that's good.
Good.
But that's great, and thanks to everyone for those comments. You can keep them coming if you wish, because we're going to do a few bits and pieces of chats. Have you seen Black Mirror?
I have watched episode 1.
That's so sad, that episode.
Chris O'Dowd.
He's so good in it.
And Rashida Jones.
Yes,
It's terrific.
You need to be in the whole of your health, because I found that very emotional.
Yeah.
I thought it was really sad.
What Black Mirror does, and some people feel that kind of maybe there was a dip for a couple of seasons, but really the writing is so strong. It gets under your skin.
It does.
You know, that ending, you're just like,
it's too much.
Boy.
There's a really good one called Bête Noire, which deals with
That's episode 2.
Is that episode 2? We'll give that a go too. The black and white hotel reverie with Emma Corrin. I could see what they were trying to do, but I don't think it really worked. But there's still, it's great.
Have you watched them all?
No, just those 3.
Okay.
There's one I'm really dying to watch, which I might watch later on, which stars Paul Giamatti, who was a guest of ours here, where he has the power to walk into photographs and walk around. Isn't that amazing?
I mean, what a concept.
Wouldn't you love to do that, though, sometimes? Like, you know, like family photograph from Christmas or something, go in and go, oh, there they all are. How's it going, everybody? And
wow, that's quite moving.
No, but it is.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
But then you could walk into any photo from any time.
Yeah.
Like from history.
Yeah, now you know where that's going. The ghosts of Rome. You could. So I want to tell everyone as well tomorrow a bit of radio news. So
you're a busy man.
I'm really busy this weekend, but I'm loving it. So this weekend, so I work 5 days a week on Virgin Radio between 10 and 1, which is also broadcast on Q102 and so on. But tomorrow, for one day only, I'm going to be migrating across to a sister radio station in London called Times Radio, which is in the same family, if you like. And Times Radio is the kind of child of the Times newspapers, Sunday Times and the Times, nothing to do with the Irish Times. It's the Times UK. And tomorrow between 10 and 1, I'm going to be doing a show on pretty much what has come out of my head and producer's head, including some really interesting. So Robert Harris is going to be on the show.
Fantastic.
Yeah, live. And it's because of Conclave, Easter Sunday, Precipice's new book is in paperback. He's great. So I'm delighted that he agreed to do that. And then I'm going to talk to a man I've spoken to before. He is. Do you remember Christine Keeler from the Profumo Affair?
Yes. Well,
right.
I wasn't alive back then, but I know of the famous Profumo Affair.
Of the affair, and she's the chair photograph's very famous. Well, they made a film called Scandal about that. And her son Seymour lives in Ireland, and he's trying to get an official pardon for his mother, Christine Keeler, from the state, because he felt that she was stitched up. And I think he's right. And for some reason, that character. She's not a character, she's a real person, really resonated with me in the past.
She's a very beautiful woman.
She was a very beautiful woman, and her son still feels the pain of what happened to her, that he feels it's a miscarriage of justice. So he's joining us tomorrow on the radio to talk about...
That's quite a mixed bag.
It's a mixed bag. Patrick Maguire is a great guy. He's a journalist with the Times. And when I got over to London, he got in touch with me on Instagram and said, do you want to come on a tour of the House of Commons? And I said, yeah, I'd love to. So we've become quite friendly. So he's going to do the newspaper review with us tomorrow as well. So it's 3 hours long, so it's going to be a lot of chat, and we're going to talk about the Australian elections, the Canadian elections. We're going to talk about what the hell's going on with Ukraine and America. So it's a very different wheelhouse to my Benson Boone during the week. But you know what I mean? I love Benson Boone because I always say Benson Boone. You know what I mean? Benson Boone. Benny Boone. So it's very different. And I'll be back on the radio obviously on Tuesday morning, but as per usual. But the Times thing is we're going to just have a little.
That's great. You really get to flex that
different muscle. Yeah. So
that's all those things you love.
I do love all that stuff. So if you want to listen to that, you download the Times Radio app.
Well,
or
Judy's wondering, how do we find that show from Ireland?
Yeah, sure.
The radio show tomorrow.
If you got a smart speaker, just go, Alexa, play Times Radio at 10 o'clock. That's easy.
It's happened now.
Alexa, where's Tuberty? And if you have, just download the app, the Times Radio app or the Virgin app. It's really ezy to find. And tune in. And I hope you like it.
All right.
So I'm very excited about that.
So any time to crack some eggs over the weekend?
I've already eaten an Easter egg.
Into Soho for some mischief? A lot of people were like, mischief, do tell more.
No, mischief means going to the Devonshire for a pint. I've talked about the Devonshire. This is my local in London now. Oisin Rogers, a man among men, has opened this pub with his friends Ashley and Charlie, and it has proven to be a rocking success for the last 18 months or so. So it's in the heart of Soho. There is a little more mischief to be had if the pubs, in London close quite early,
So what is closing time?
It's 11 o'clock, man.
Yeah. And the big difference being, in Ireland, it's like, it's coming, but you have time.
You have time, and
they'll serve you a pint at like 10:30 or 5 to 11 in London and take it back off you 5 minutes later.
It's a horror show. It's a horror show for an Irishman to be trying to enjoy yourself. So I do have a plan B if it is a longer night. Now I'm hitting a certain age. I'm not going out that much, but the odd time I go, I'm not ready to say goodnight just yet. So there's a great little spot. Which is a bit of a knock on the door, but it's like it's legal.
What's the knock?
Yeah. It's like a rainy night in Soho.
Or it's dumb, let me in.
It's called Jerry's, and there's always a bit of jazz going on. It's under the ground, and it's really nice. They've nice pictures of all the old actors and actresses.
Is Ronnie Scott still a thing?
I haven't been to Ronnie Scott, strangely. We were talking to Joe Connor about that. Ronnie Scott, it's still a thing.
Yeah.
And it's still there. Soho it still has that lovely as Joe says, dirt under the fingernails. Like that's a lovely description of it. But yeah, it's an interesting part of town for sure. Still the mischief there. The French House is a great pub there, so that's always a good one to go to too. So yeah, so lots going on, and then we're going to announce another book club, but not now. We'll come back and do this another time. Another thing I wanted to mention was the movie I went to see last week called Sinners. You might have seen the posters for it.
Were you interviewing someone from the cast?
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
Delroy.
And there's an Irish connection, you mentioned?
Weirdly.
How?
So
maybe that gives
too much
away.
It's set in the Mississippi Delta, right in the 1930s, and you think, yes, I'm playing the guitar there in case you watch it, because our guest is a blues sort of harmonica and piano and all that. Anyway, and I'm watching this go, and I like to go to see a film like with a blank check. I don't like to go in knowing everything about it. I want to learn as I'm watching. So I'm kind of slightly spoiler alert a little bit, but I didn't know what this was. And it's all the blues and the rest of it. And then these guys, one guy appears, and for whatever reason, he lifts up off the ground and lands. And I went, oh, we're into vampire territory now. Now, Joe will appreciate that as well with Bram Stoker. And I won't say too much more, but music is a huge part of this film, about music travelling through time. Now, it's not a time travel movie, but and the important music as history and oral history and protection of the story of the oppressed. And in the middle of it, there's this mad version of kind of vampires doing the Rocky Road to Dublin, right?
What?
I know, that's what I'm saying. I don't understand. And I just want to hear yeah. It's completely bizarre. And I'm looking at it going, I'm loving this. I wasn't looking at it going, this is stupid. It's not. It's really, it's a mind melt. I was thinking of the word, trying to find the appropriate word. It's a mind melt. Is that right? Tom, is that we go with
a mind bend?
It's a mind bending. Anyways, so the people at the screening said, by the way, stick around for the credits. I said, all right, it was better to do that. So I was watching the credits because something happened, and I'm looking at the credits. I see Iarla Leonard, who's great composer and a musician, and he was the consultant for the Irish music bits on this film.
They did their homework properly.
They did. So I tagged him on the post that I put up, and he got in touch to say how much he enjoyed his time on the film and so on. So it's just all full circle. It's great. It's very, very exciting. And next week on the show, we'll play our interview that I did with John Cleese from Fawlty Towers. And he came into studio on Tuesday.
I got a sense from the post that you were a giddy kid when you met him.
Do you know what it was?
Childhood hero?
He would be one of my absolute favourites. And, it is probably wrapped up, as I say, in nostalgia, watching it, at home, watching Fawlty Towers. When you're a kid, you see Fawlty Towers like a cartoon. It's just long legs and guys hitting each other with frying pans. And then you get a bit older, you go, oh, it's satire. It's really funny. Like he's the original, as I always say, he's the original Curb Your Enthusiasm. It's just the world is against him and he can't do anything, and his observations are very funny. 85 years old, John Cleese.
Wow.
And he is sharp as a tack and very, very funny. And at the end of the interview, he forgot his umbrella. And his PA said, John, you forgot your umbrella. Sorry, umbrella, very good. And he went into full faulty and he went over to get his umbrella and he made this really stupid face, right? Like this, my umbrella. And he walked over like this to get
Tom,
the
we want to close up for a ride.
Yeah. Don't do it. My umbrella. And he goes over to get the umbrella. All he was doing was acting the maggot.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's it.
Yeah.
Don't grow up.
Yeah.
Don't grow up.
Yeah. Well, as you always say, we're children with
wrinkles.
Yeah.
And don't grow up, it's a trap. So I just thought that's it. Like if you can be that goofy at that age and just go like, if you can afford, and I mean that emotionally in life, to be able to say, oh, that's stupid stuff.
Don't sweat the small stuff.
Yeah.
And what's important in life and all that good stuff.
That's important.
Fawlty Towers and the mention of that would be a tenuous segue into mentioning perhaps who you're going to chat to on this week's episode of The Bookshelf on Tuesday.
Oh, thank you. So the Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, is our guest this week. On Tuesday, the episode will drop. And as I said to him in the episode, we're not friends, but I would have interviewed him, and you know him from the job. And what I always enjoyed about Micheál Martin, and regardless of your politics, I mean, it's not a political interview, and always kind of at pains to say that people going, why didn't you ask about housing and so on? And while I appreciate that they're all important issues and they get touched on very slightly, it's a book interview, and it's just trying to see a different side of somebody. Simon Harris did a great interview as well, and we have Brian O'Driscoll on. We don't talk about who won what match. It's about life and so on. So Micheál Martin gives a very good account of himself. He's a very interesting guy. He loves history, loves books, loves teaching, loves learning. So he's got that.
boxing.
He loves boxing.
Loves
I mean,
boxing.
that was a real revelation. I know you're a boxing fan too, and it's interesting that you point that out because he goes down the rabbit hole of and I mean that in a good way, talking about Muhammad Ali and the Rumble in the Jungle. And
Oh, yeah.
he obviously took quite a few lessons. His dad was a boxer, and a bus driver. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And these are fascinating little tidbits that you wouldn't discover ordinarily about the person who is leading your country. So
It's a very warm and intimate interview.
Good, you liked it. Good. Well, I'm really happy with that. That is desperately sad news. That are we mentioning that? Or,
So
Jesus.
since we've come on air, and some people have commented on it as well.
That's
very sad report.
Yeah, Julian Benson. Julian Benson has died. That's that.
Yeah, 54 years of age.
Yeah, he was in college. He was a couple of years ahead of me in college, and I knew him. He was a friend of my cousin's. Sinead, she'll be devastated, and I'm really sorry to hear that. That is.
And sorry to break that news
that's
to
okay.
you
That's
on air as
that's
well.
life
Our
and that's death.
condolences to his family, and he'd done incredible.
He did
charity
great work
over the years.
Cystic fibrosis was his illness, and he was remarkable because he was a judge on Dancing with the Stars, if you remember, for a few years, and then he was. I actually thought, for some reason, I got it into my head that he was okay and he was getting better, and he raised a lot of money to open up a special house.
Yes, which featured on the TV, and they did a whole build. And
they did the build, and so he was keen to do something right and to do something kind, and he was quite kind of like Liberace-esque. He had, there was capes and hair, and
flamboyance,
darling, and he had that voice, that guttural voice, and he was a one-off. And I'm so sorry for his family, and I'm so sorry to hear that today. Julian Benson, there's a lot of colour has left the building today. And may he rest in peace. That's desperately sad. Okay. Well, look, thank you for letting me know that. I'm glad to be able to say that to people, to let them know that how good he was. And as I say, I'm sending all my love to his family.
And many people reflecting that in the comments and saying he leaves behind a great legacy for people with cystic fibrosis.
Yeah, and that's really important. And I think a lot of families with cystic fibrosis in their universe will be very upset by the news too, because it's a mortality check for people. But I know that they have made great headway in this world, but you can never have enough. So I hope everyone's doing okay today. That's desperately sad. But thank you for your time, Aidan. Thanks. And what's Tom, is it? Tom, I'm joking. That's really mean. Tom.
That's
He's still
me
chewing
in
the gum.
corner.
Oh, that's me in the corner. That's me. The chewing gum's going down. Tom just walked out. Okay, we'll
Do
leave.
you want to go and get on that airplane and get back into
I've got to go back
Times Radio?
see you Times Radio tomorrow between 10 and 1, and we'll have another bookshelf. As I say, the episode drops with Micheál Martin on Tuesday, and we've got loads more episodes coming up. And really, I just think there's something about this season that's.
Don't give any away.
Okay, lots of love. Thanks everybody for tuning in today, and we'll see you on the other side. Mind yourselves.